Plug Power stock has the easy potential to double within the next year or so if they continue to execute the way they are. In this video, I want to give you guys an analysis of some of the latest news out from Plug, because let's be honest, they've been coming out and executing some amazing contracts, which are really setting the stage for a lot of revenue growth and potential bottom line profitability by 2024. But as usual, guys, before we get into it, make sure to drop me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So the first thing I want to start off by is addressing the recent press release about an order from Lhyfe, which is one of Plug Power's partners, for a multi-site electrolyzer system in Europe. Now, the reason why, guys, this is such a big deal is because electrolyzers are the core foundation of how you can make hydrogen productively and cleanly. Yes, the costs in the short term are high, but there are already big companies out there working to reduce this cost by bringing up the scale and by tying together more stakeholders. I know the biggest argument people tend to bring up against hydrogen is that the costs are high, the efficiency is low, and that there is simply no infrastructure. Well, the only way you're going to get to a point where infrastructure is everywhere is by investing early and tying together stakeholders so that you can bring down the initial capital expenditure. And that is exactly what this company Lhyfe, which is actually publicly listed in Paris, is doing. And Plug Power is one of their main sources of electrolyzer units to power their specific projects all across Europe. And for those wondering what exactly these projects are, well, here's a good simulation of exactly the stakeholders and technologies this company is tying together to make green hydrogen at scale. They're essentially using solar farms and wind farms and their electricity to make hydrogen through electrolyzers and clean water. This water will obviously release oxygen as a byproduct, and this hydrogen can then be transported to any refueling station where they can support hydrogen fuel cell trucks and cars. And we all know that hydrogen is really the only way that you can decarbonize heavy-duty transportation, and Europe is way ahead of the Americas when it comes to this charge. And as we all know, hydrogen is the only way to get the equivalent of fossil fuels using renewable resources like solar and wind, which is exactly why investing in it today is going to have such a big impact on our carbonization. And this hydrogen creation is only possible by the technology that Plug Power manufactures, which means that any other company that wants to work with creation of green hydrogen will most likely have to work with Plug Power in the future. And as this industry grows and becomes more mature, these guys are going to be the ringleader when it comes to hydrogen fuel cell solutions, not only for the front end, but also for the back end. And what's so surprising is that some analysts on Wall Street are actually understanding this opportunity much better than others. Specifically, an Evercore analyst said that this Lhyfe order could be the very first in a big pipeline of future orders, because obviously this order was only for 50 megawatts. Meanwhile, they have a big contract for around 300 megawatts to be put in Europe by 2025, which should put in perspective exactly the scale that we're talking about here. And you know what's the really key thing to keep in mind here? Which is the fact that the very early orders Plug Power ships out are going to be inherently the most expensive orders they ship out, meaning their gross margins and profits are probably going to be in the negative. But as they scale and manufacture at scale, and as the raw material cost for making these electrolyzers comes down, Plug Power is going to approach profitability much faster than they would have if they were not selling these at such a big scale. And by far the most underrated aspect and tailwind for Plug is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to potentially improve Plug Power's planned payback by 4 to 5 years and bring them positive free cash flow of around $500 million in 2025. Guys, this is a massive deal. This is not profitability, this is free cash flow. It is significantly harder to achieve incremental free cash flow than profitability, which is something obviously Plug Power already expects to happen by 2024, which means there could be even more catalysts ahead financially from an earnings report standpoint in the latter half of 2023 as the company gets closer to breaking even on gross margins and also cutting their operating expenses over the long term, which will result in some massive shift in the way that Wall Street predicts the stock. And yes, even though in the short term, Plug Power's stock valuation is quite expensive at a price of sales of almost $30, in the long term, the market is still probably undervaluing this cash flow situation and some of the tailwinds from economies of scale. But again, that does require Plug Power to continue executing at the level that they are right now, and that there is no extra competition that comes into this space. But to be completely honest, with the amount of exposure this company has to so many different markets, specifically the commercial EV market in Europe with their joint venture with Hyliion, I'm quite confident that there's going to be very little competition for this company going forward. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to take on this throne for a company that's been in the business for almost 20 years and has obviously gone through all the ups and the downs. And what exactly will give Plug Power its competitive advantage when it comes to executing? Well, it's their insane balance sheet, which is where they're sitting with around $3 billion in cash and cash equivalents with extremely low debt in the short term of only around $430 million. And even if you account their long-term debt on their bigger assets, that comes into around $1.4 billion, which is very low compared to the total assets of around $5.7 billion, which means that even if somebody else were to develop a better technology, Plug Power has the capital position available to expand even more and potentially do even share buybacks in the future if their business starts performing very well and reaches some form of stability. The key here is that we want to see their gross profit and margins actually flip to the positive side, and them ramping down some of their SG&A expenses, which have obviously been going up significantly as they increase headcount and as they've been raising more money in 2021. And one of the other requisites I would like to see is that they continue to invest in R&D because they need to maintain their competitive advantage with the efficiency and power factors of their electrolyzer and their fuel cell systems. As for what can we expect with the stock price in the short term, honestly, I continue to be a buyer on any major crashes or red weeks that we tend to see in the stock. Obviously, right now, that is not one of them, but again, we could see them in the future because the volatility is so high. If we break above this $32 level, we could most definitely see a retest of this $45 level on the stock. And obviously, if we get above that, there is a very high likelihood that in 6 months or 12 months time frame, we get back to those all-time highs. But obviously, with the macroeconomic situation in the short term, there might be more selling pressure on the stock. But as a long-term investor, that does not obviously concern me. And if I really wanted to look at some good deals and buying opportunities on the stock, it would be around that $19 to $15 region, which obviously right now actually looks like a stretch to actually happen. But again, you never know what happens in the stock market. And overall, every other week or so, I do tend to just dollar cost average into my favorite investments, regardless of what price they're trading at. But as usual, guys, make sure to drop me a thumbs up if you found some value from this video, and let me know down in the comment section below what you guys are doing with Plug stock and whether or not you think it is actually a good buying opportunity right now.